Hello, and welcome to Field Notes from the Oversoul. I'm Aelira Laura Elliott, an embodied Oversoul messenger, and this podcast is a space for grounded reflection, soulstream remembrance, and practical tools for living in alignment with your Oversoul. Whether you're just beginning to explore spiritual embodiment or have walked this path for years, these episodes are here to support your return to inner truth through clarity, care, and direct experience. I don't offer answers from outside of you. I offer what's risen from within me so you might feel what's already living in you. This is episode 2, Listening versus Conditioning and How to Tell the Difference. Welcome back to Field Notes from the Oversoul. I'm really glad you're here. Before we begin, I want to invite you to slow your body just a little. You don't need to focus hard. You don't need to get anything. Just arrive. Let's begin. In the first episode, we talked about something I call the gentle yes. That calm, grounded, inner signal that lets you know when something is aligned without pressure or fear. In today's episode, we're going to explore why that signal can be hard to hear and how to tell the difference between true inner guidance and inner conditioning. This is not about doing spirituality right. It's about learning how to listen to yourself without overriding yourself. So I'd like to start by talking about why this is so confusing for most people. Let's start by normalizing something. If you feel confused about your inner voice, you're not behind, you're not broken, and you're not doing anything wrong. Most of us were never taught how to distinguish between wisdom, fear, habit, and conditioning. We were taught how to think, we were taught how to perform, and we were taught how to respond to expectations. But we were rarely taught how to listen inwardly in a grounded way. So if everything inside feels loud, conflicting, or urgent at times, that makes sense. This episode is about bringing clarity, not control. So defining the Oversoul again in the simplest possible language. The Oversoul is the part of you that already knows who you are. It is not something you need to access. It's not a higher version of you. And it's not outside you. It is the larger intelligence of your own being. You could think of it as your deepest perspective, your most honest orientation, with a part of you that doesn't panic. The Oversoul holds long-term understanding, patience, and perspective beyond fear. Because of that, the Oversoul doesn't rush. If something inside you is rushing, pushing, or threatening, that's not Oversoul guidance. Now let's talk about what conditioning actually is, because this is the piece that often gets misunderstood. Conditioning isn't bad. Conditioning isn't a failure. Conditioning is what you learned in order to survive, belong, or be accepted. Conditioning forms from family expectations, school systems, work environments, social rules, or emotional experiences. Conditioning asks one main question: how do I stay safe or valued? That question shaped a lot of our behavior. The problem is not that conditioning exists. The problem is when conditioning pretends to be guidance. So let's talk about the emotional tone of conditioning. Here's an important distinction. Conditioning has a tone. It often feels tight, pressured, urgent, and self-critical. Conditioning often uses words like should, must, have to, or else. It speaks in consequences. For example, if I don't do this, I'll disappoint them. Or if I rest, I'll fall behind. Or if I say no, I'll be rejected. Notice how these thoughts don't ask how you feel. They tell you what will happen if you don't comply. That's survival language. Now let's look at how Oversoul guidance feels, not sounds. Oversoul guidance doesn't argue. It doesn't convince. It doesn't debate. It registers. Often it shows up as a soft settling in the body, a sense of, I can wait, or a quiet clarity without explanation. This is why people miss it, because it doesn't demand attention. The Oversoul trusts you to notice. Now I'd like to share a reflection from this life as Laura, illustrating urgency versus truth. For a long time, I thought urgency meant importance. If something felt pressing, I assumed it mattered. But my body kept telling another story. Whenever I followed urgency, my chest tightened, my breath shortened, my nervous system stayed activated. Even when things worked out, I felt depleted. Eventually, I started asking a different question. Instead of, what should I do? I asked, what happens in my body when I imagine not doing this? Very often, my body relaxed. That told me something important. The urgency wasn't truth. It was conditioning tied to worth. That realization changed how I make decisions. Now I'd like to give a past life memory here because it illustrates this distinction between listening and conditioning very clearly. When I say past life, I want to be clear about what I mean. I'm not talking about something I believe because I was told. I'm talking about something I remember now as an embodied awareness. This memory came online as my Oversoul embodiment deepened. In this life, I remember being a woman living on the edge of a small settlement, long before modern systems of work or validation. There was no hierarchy around me, no titles, no approval structures. People came to me when they were uncertain or grieving, not because I advertised myself, but because I was still. I listened more than I spoke. I didn't offer advice unless it was asked for. And even then, what I offered was usually a reflection, not an answer. There was no pressure to be useful, no need to prove value, no expectation that I should do more. My role existed because it was aligned, not because it was justified. In that life, there was no internal argument about whether I was enough. I didn't question whether I should be there. I didn't rehearse what to say. I didn't measure my worth by outcomes. I simply listened, first inwardly, then outwardly. This past life is important because it shows something very simple. When conditioning is absent, listening is natural. There was no confusion between intuition, fear, obligation, because fear wasn't required to function. That life didn't operate on urgency. It operated on timing. People waited until something felt ready, and so did I. Remembering this now helped me understand something in this life. The confusion I experienced wasn't because I lacked intuition. It was because I was trained to override it. When this memory came back online, it didn't feel dramatic. It felt familiar. Like remembering how to sit in a chair the right way after years of holding tension. That's what Oversoul remembering is like. It's not about becoming someone else. It's about releasing what was layered on top. This is why I include past life reflections in this podcast. Not to escape this life, but to restore continuity. To remember that listening has always been natural to us, and that conditioning is learned, not intrinsic. So, why is the Oversoul quiet on purpose? Here's something subtle but powerful. The Oversoul does not use fear because it does not doubt itself. Fear is a tool of survival. Wisdom doesn't need tools. Let me say that again slowly. Wisdom does not need fear to motivate it. So if something inside you is trying to scare you into action, that voice is not aligned guidance. Your body is a tool for discernment. Your body is not random. It responds differently to pressure, truth, safety, alignment. When conditioning is active, the body braces. I've only recently realized that my body has been bracing my whole life as I learned way of being. Not until my Oversoul showed me this did I realize I had been bracing and the detrimental effects it was having on my body and my health. When truth is present, the body softens. This doesn't mean everything aligned feels quote-unquote good. Sometimes it feels unfamiliar, but it does feel steady. So now I'd like to do a practice about listening without deciding. You may want to pause the podcast afterward and take time with this. But let's begin this practice together. I'd like you to sit comfortably. Let your shoulders drop. Place one hand somewhere grounding, like on the table or your chair or a crystal. Now think of a situation where you feel unsure. Don't decide anything, just notice. Now I ask, what happens if I imagine saying yes? I want you to notice your breath, notice your jaw, notice your chest. Now I want you to imagine waiting. Not forever, just waiting. What changes? This is not about answers. This is about awareness. Now I'd like to do another practice with you about removing time pressure. It's a simple but powerful experiment. Say out loud or silently, I don't need to decide this right now. Then pause. If anxiety spikes, that's conditioning. If relief appears, that's truth. This is one of the clearest signals I know. So why did we learn to override ourselves? Many of us learned very early that our needs were inconvenient, our timing was wrong, our intuition wasn't reliable. So we learned to override. Over time, overriding became normal. So normal that we are unaware that we are doing it. Now, this episode is not about blame. It's about compassion. You adapted. Now you're learning something new. Rebuilding trust takes time. Trust is rebuilt through small pauses, honest noticing, and respecting your own signals. You don't need to get it right every time. You just need to listen one moment longer than you used to. Changing ingrained habits takes time. Be patient with yourself as you bear witness to the conditioning and consciously decide to let it go. It takes time to remember what listening feels like. I want to briefly return to the past life reflection I shared earlier. Not to analyze it, just to remember the feeling of it. In that life, listening didn't feel like effort. It wasn't a skill I practiced. It was a state my body already knew. There was no urgency to respond, no pressure to be right, no fear of missing something important. Listening felt spacious. When I noticed myself tightening in this life, mentally or emotionally, I now recognize that tightening as conditioning, not intuition. That awareness didn't come from thinking. It came from remembering what listening feels like without pressure. This is something the body remembers faster than the mind. And why does this reminder matter? I'm sharing this reminder because many of us try to listen to intuition while still tense. And tension makes listening harder. Embodied listening doesn't start with answers. It starts with settling. You're not trying to hear better. You're letting yourself soften enough to hear what's already there. So let's do one more practice of remembering embodied listening. This is a simple practice you can return to anytime. It doesn't require meditation experience, and it doesn't require silence. You can even do it with your eyes open. And the purpose of this practice is it helps your body remember what it feels like to listen without fear, pressure, or proving. It's not about making a decision. It's about restoring internal trust. So let's start by settling the body. Take one slow breath. You don't need to change it. Just notice it. Let your shoulders drop a little. Let your jaw unclench if it wants to. This tells your nervous system that nothing is being demanded right now. I'd like you to bring to mind a time in your life when you knew something without needing proof. It might have been small, like knowing it was time to leave a room, or knowing someone wasn't being honest, or knowing you needed to rest. You don't need details, just the feeling of knowing. And notice where that feeling shows up in your body. Now I'd like to name the sensation, not the answer. So instead of asking, "What should I do?" ask, "What does listening feel like right now?" Maybe it feels like warmth, spaciousness, quiet, steadiness. There is no correct sensation. Listening feels different in different bodies. For a few seconds, let your attention stay with that sensation. You're not trying to interpret it, and you're not trying to act on it. You're letting your system remember, this is what listening feels like. That's it. This practice works because intuition is not located in the thinking mind. It's distributed through the body. When the body feels safe enough to soften, listening returns naturally. Over time, this makes it easier to tell the difference between intuition, fear, and conditioning. Because intuition doesn't rush you, it doesn't argue, and it doesn't require justification. Now, I want to walk you through a real-time example you can use in your own life. This is the kind of decision most of us face regularly. Nothing dramatic, nothing symbolic, just real. Imagine this situation. You receive a message. It could be a text, an email, or a request from someone you care about. They're asking you to do something. Help with a task, have a conversation, make a commitment. Your first reaction is to respond quickly. Now, before answering, let's slow this down. As soon as you read the message, notice what happens in your body. Don't judge it, just observe. Do you feel a tightening in your chest, a sense of urgency, a pressure to respond right away? That initial reaction is not intuition. It's conditioning. Conditioning means learned response patterns, usually shaped by fear of disappointment, rejection, or conflict. Instead of answering, imagine setting the phone down. Tell yourself, I don't need to decide right now. This pause is not avoidance, it's listening. Take one breath. Now ask yourself, not your mind, but your body, what happens if I say yes? What happens if I say no? Don't think through consequences. Just notice sensations. A fear-based yes often feels like contraction, heaviness, obligation. A gentle yes often feels like openness, steadiness, calm, willingness. A true no often feels like relief, clarity, or settling. So now I'd like you to name what you feel. Silently name what's present. For example, this feels tight, or this feels neutral, or this feels relieving. You're not choosing yet, you're building awareness. This is how embodied listening develops. Now imagine responding in a way that matches what you felt. Responding from presence. If it's a gentle yes, the response feels natural, not forced. If it's a no, the response is clear but kind. If you're unsure, the response might simply be, "Let me think about this and get back to you." That is still aligned. So why does this example matter? Most of us think intuition should give instant answers, but intuition often shows up as what relaxes when pressure is removed. This is why slowing down is so important. Listening happens when the nervous system feels safe enough not to rush. So just as a gentle reminder, you're not failing if you don't know right away. You're practicing discernment. Discernment means the ability to sense what is true without forcing a conclusion. And that is a skill you can grow. I want to share a second example, this time involving work and boundaries. Imagine this situation. You're already doing your job. You're meeting expectations, but you want to be seen as reliable or capable. Then a supervisor or coworker asks you to take on something extra. Your first thought might be, "I should say yes," or "I don't want to disappoint them," or "I don't want to look like I'm not committed." That reaction is familiar to many of us. Before answering, notice what's happening inside. Does your body feel tight, braced, anxious about how you'll be perceived? That sensation is not intuition. It's the need to prove worth. Proving means trying to secure value through effort instead of recognizing inherent worth. Take one breath. Let yourself remember, my worth is not decided in this moment. This pause creates space between conditioning and choice. Now I'm going to have you check your body for alignment. Ask yourself, if I say yes, how does my body feel later tonight? If I say no, or ask for a different arrangement, how does my body feel? Don't answer with words. Let sensations respond. fear-based yes often feels like exhaustion, resentment, self-abandonment. A boundary-based response often feels like steadiness, relief, self-respect. A gentle yes might sound like, I can take this on, but I'll need to adjust something else. A true no might sound like, I don't have capacity for this right now. Both are honest, both are aligned. And why does this matter? Because when you consistently override your body to meet expectations, your intuition gets quieter, not because it's gone, but because it's being ignored. Boundaries restore listening. They are not a failure of kindness. They are a form of self-trust. You don't need to become better at listening. You need to become less defended. And that happens slowly, through repetition, through kindness toward your own system. This is what remembering feels like. Just a short reminder, you don't need to decide faster. You need to decide from a calmer place. That's where listening lives. In closing, this episode wasn't about learning something new. It was about remembering something natural. Listening happens when pressure falls away. The gentle yes doesn't argue, it doesn't rush. It waits for you to slow down. You are not disconnected, you are discerning. The Oversoul is patient. It doesn't punish, it doesn't withdraw. It waits in steadiness. Thank you for taking this time. Thank you for listening inwardly. In the next episode, we'll explore what happens when you stop overriding yourself and how life begins to reorganize when alignment leads. Until then, trust what feels calm. Trust what feels kind. Trust what doesn't rush you. See you next time.